Hey everyone, thank you for joining me today. You get a solo episode with me today, so I actually don't have a guest for you. So I did this on purpose. It's been a while. So before I rebranded the podcast last year, it was just me for like a year and a half for the most part. I did all the episodes by myself and I loved it. It was so much fun. And when I rebranded the podcast last year and made it just about marriage, so prior to that, it was kind of a general therapy podcast. But when I rebranded it, made it all about marriage and children, I decided that I wanted to have guests on. And so I've had guests on every week since I guess August. I don't really remember when I relaunched this, but it's been a while. So it's been really fun. And I have had a few people ask me to do some solo episodes. I guess they missed that from the kind of the first round of the podcast. So I decided I wanted to try to interject some of those and do some solos. And honestly, I have been so busy. It has been a really busy past probably month and a half. And I went from like having so many episodes recorded ahead. Like I had just a like bank full of them for weeks. I wasn't having to record and I was just using them up and anything I recorded was just adding to that. But the past couple of months or month and a half have been so busy that I honestly haven't really been recording very much with people. And so I ran out. I ran out of episodes. And so I've got to get back to it. I did not post an episode last week. I'm really sorry. So I dropped the ball and I just had a lot of stuff going on. Like, I don't even know. Like, okay, let me walk you through the last few months, and this will actually roll us right into our topic for today. But I'm going to fill you in on some of the things that have been going on. So, in January, my husband and I bought our first short-term rental, our first Airbnb in Branson, Missouri, which is, if you've never been there, it's just a little tourist town. It's such a fun place. It's a family-friendly vacation spot. And so we spent a couple of months kind of going back and forth and doing a ton of work to get it ready. And it was such a fun project for us to do together. But it was a busy project. So that went live in March, and we have enjoyed watching the reservation. So we have a management company that runs it for us, but we get notified every time someone books, and it's been really fun just to kind of maintain that. So a lot of work up front and then systems in place now that run it for us. So we do have stuff that we need to do, but it's not very much. And then I don't remember the order of things, but let's see. I hired a new therapist for my practice, and that was in November. And but it took months to get her onboarded with insurance and stuff like that. So she started in March. We are in the process of opening. I'm really excited about this, but we're opening a second location of my group practice. So we're in Frisco, Texas, and we're opening a location in San Antonio. And so we just signed the lease on a space. So there was a lot of time kind of dedicated to finding a space. And that's about 5.5 hours from where I am. And the reason is because I have a therapist that works down there for me. She's actually my sister-in-law, and she's an amazing therapist. And she's worked for me for about a little over a year virtually. And we are setting her up with an office. So she will run our first, I guess, satellite office of our practice. So we're growing. And so we just kind of wrapped up the lease and stuff like that. So that'll start officially in June, but all the back end stuff is ongoing, right? And so um, let's see what else. So then my kiddo was sick for a little while. He missed quite a bit of school with some illness. And so that threw my schedule off and just, taking care of a kiddo. We had some work done at the house. So why am I telling you all of this? Because I am a creature of habit and I work best when I have structure and systems. And I am really big on intentionally creating systems and just plans and, yeah, structure. because my world runs better, and especially, you know, this when you have a lot going on, it's much more, you get more done if you're organized. And if you're not, it's just easy to feel overwhelmed. And so, what was happening just really mostly in the past month and a half, which was a lot more of the like having to change my schedule because our kiddo was sick, and then there was some school stuff that I was volunteering for. And so, that although I'm very thankful that I have created a job for myself that allows me to have a lot of flexibility, and I'm very thankful for the clients that I have that are pretty easygoing. So when I have to text them and be like, hey, I need to, can I move you to a different time? Can we go virtual instead of in person? They're amazing, super accommodating. So I was able to do that. And while I'm really glad that I was able to keep doing all the things and nothing fell between the cracks, internally, I felt it more. Um, and it takes a while for me to hit that. Like as I've gotten older, I've just gotten better at managing stress or just having a lot on my plate. But you know, we all hit a wall, right? And so I was just starting to feel the impact of running in a bunch of different directions and not being able to maintain my routine because I still had to do all the things. Like nothing got taken off my plate. I just had to make room for more stuff. And stuff like all the business related stuff, that's been great. I've chosen to do that. That was nothing, never taking on more than I can handle as far as that. I'm pretty good at doing that because, again, I'm very intentional with what I put on my plate. But when life comes up and throws extra stuff at you that you're not expecting, it's harder to, I don't know, you don't have time to prepare for it. You don't think about it and make a decision to do that. You just have to roll with the punches and just do what's required of you as a parent or as an employer or whatever, employee, whatever, wherever your stress is coming from that's out of the blue. So so anyway, all that to say that I've had to pivot and make some changes. So if you were involved with me on Facebook, then you saw that I actually made a really good decision for myself, a very intentional decision that I've been thinking about for a few weeks. I decided that the Facebook group that I created last summer, that is all for marriage and reprioritizing your marriage and just kind of where I did trainings and all kinds of things, I decided that I was ready to close that group. So I posted a poll. A lot of you guys voted and agreed that closing the group was a good decision because I'm just going to be doing the exact same thing I was doing in the group, but just going to be doing it on my regular Facebook profile. And really, what that was for me was just taking something off my plate that didn't really serve me anymore. And I'm really big on like if I'm doing something, I want to make sure it is serving a good purpose, whether it's a personal thing, like it's helping me personally, like is it a hobby or a passion and it's really doing something for me, or it's serving something professionally, financially, my family, whatever. And this kind of stopped serving anyone, right? It was fun. I enjoyed it, but I was putting the same stuff on my profile. It was just a kind of a duplicate way of reaching people. And it just, I wasn't enjoying it as much as I had before. And so I decided it was time to let it go. And so I am closing it probably today, feeling really, really relieved and good about it. And then I'm hoping to be able to shift my focus to where because I won't maybe feel the overwhelm of having to nurture that group, it'll help me maybe invest time differently in my profile. So I'm also trying, and I'm this is a kind of a more of a it's not a fully developed thought, but I'm trying to decide what I want the podcast to look like. I've had a podcast now for 2.5 years, and I've missed just a handful of episodes in 2.5 years. Every week there's been an episode. Started out coming out every Friday, and then when I rebranded it, it's been coming out on Monday. I love it. It's so much fun. But the fact that I haven't been able to maintain it the past few weeks, I don't like that. I don't like being inconsistent for myself, for you, for anyone that's expecting it. And I know so many of you are so kind and you do wait for it every week. And I hear from you with good feedback and then wondering where there's no episode when I've missed it. And so I want to make sure I'm doing this right. I want to be, I want to do it right. So I'm trying to decide, do I keep it going every week? Or do I turn it into what a lot of podcasters do, which is create seasons? I don't love that idea yet. It's an idea I'm exploring. I would love to hear your feedback. Um, I think if things calm down for me just a little bit, which I think they may in a few weeks, because we're going out of town. I'm taking the longest break from work for 2 weeks. We're taking our camper and we're going up to Yellowstone and Grand Tetons and all kinds of stuff. It's the last week of May and first week of June. So I am, and school's wrapping up the next couple weeks. Like there's a lot going on, and that's great. It's all good stuff. I'm super thankful for it, but I do have to make sure I'm taking care of all my responsibilities, right? So my priority always has to be my practice because of who I serve, how I serve people, and I employ people, and they rely on that. So that always gets my priority. And then these other things are my passions that I've developed into fun things like the podcast and the coaching thing. And so I am working on those. So I'm telling you all of this, first of all, because I want you to know that I have reasons behind the things that I do. I am trying to be good at doing all the things I committed to doing, but this is where we roll into our really strong topic, which is being intentional. And you have heard me, if you've heard any of my episodes, then you've heard me talk about being intentional. So let me tell you what that means. To me, that means making decisions on purpose, right? Making decisions about things in my life that I've thought through. I'm making these decisions for a reason, and the outcome of this decision is going to serve a very important purpose in my life. And the reason we're going to talk about this is because I find that in my therapy practice and in my coaching world, and working with individuals who are dealing with just personal struggles or parenting or marriage, anything. Well, even when I'm working with kids, um, life is full of decisions, right? Life is full of little things and sometimes bigger things that we have to do. Some things we choose to do, we elect to bring new things into our lives and try new things or go new places or take on something that opens up a new chapter in our lives. And then a lot of things we do because we have to do them, whether it's out of obligation or out of responsibility or out of necessity, whatever. We have to just do things that we don't always want to do. So, what I've found in working with people is that when we feel like we have to do these things that we don't want to do, then it very much can feel like a burden. It can feel like a chore. It can feel like a task that is very heavy and very draining for a lot of people. And so what I try to teach people is about shifting your mindset, right? If you look at something that you have to do and you're very focused on how you don't want to do it or how inconvenient it is, then your mood, your attitude is going to reflect that. It's going to be a very poor attitude. You're not going to really invest a lot of time and energy. You're probably not going to do it very well. And you may come across a certain way to other people in your life that would potentially push people away, give people a bad impression of you, maybe damage a relationship or hurt someone. And so when we are mindful of needing to make certain decisions and we accept that we have to make them, right? Accepting it and not being in denial or resistance of it is a really good first step. But when we accept, like, okay, I have no choice, I have to do this thing, then we roll into, okay, how do I want to do it? Do I want to have an attitude? Do I want to be really unhappy about it? Do I want to whine and complain about it? Or do I need to just find a way to do it that's going to make this as painless as possible and maybe even make it go quick? Or if it's going to be drawn out, like, let me just try to balance it by doing some other things for myself to where not all of my attention or energy is invested in this thing only, because that's really not a pleasant thing that I want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and also make sure I have some other hobbies or passions or time with family or whatever that I'm doing to help balance this out, right? Instead of it being this thing that just sucks all the energy out of me. I'm trying to add other things in my life that will make me tolerant of that other part of my life. So when we're talking about relationships and we're talking about marriage specifically, marriage and your relationship is going to come with, and parenting. Let's go ahead and include parenting and your marriage. Those are going to include lots of responsibilities and obligations that are not always super fun for us, right? So a lot of the things that we do as a parent or as a spouse are very rewarding, and we enjoy them, and we feel just our cup is full and our heart is full, and they're very, very, very strong positives for us. Then there is a lot of stuff that we have to do as parents and as spouses that are less positive, right? They maybe are inconvenient, or we don't enjoy them, or they are, there isn't a lot of reward. And maybe you feel like you're just a slave to everyone in your home, and all you're doing is just serving everyone in your home, and you don't get a lot of downtime, or you don't get a lot of you time, or maybe there's not a lot of gratitude, maybe there's not a lot of appreciation. And so when we have to do these things, we have choices, right? We get to decide how we're going to go about doing it. And you know the people. I mean, I bet off the top of your head right now, you can think of someone that just always has a bad attitude, right? No matter what they have to do in their home or with their family or for work, they're just complaining all the time. And they're negative. Everything is whining. Everything is in like just a complaint. And they don't really realize that they do it, right? Like they do the things they have to do, but they're just kind of hard to be around in general because of their attitude. And then you know the people who just seem to always be positive, and they're just always have a smile on their face and always try to look at the bright side of things, and try to have a good like attitude about the things they have to do. It doesn't mean they don't struggle. They just try not to wear their struggle and their negativity on their sleeve. And then I think we have all the rest of us, right? Like everyone else that like can sometimes be positive and can be encouraging of other people and just have a good attitude and maybe encouraging of themselves. And then other times they're just having a hard time and they're feeling really down and they need more encouragement. Maybe sometimes they're whiny and sometimes they have a bad attitude, but they try to pull themselves out of it, like human nature, right? And so I think most of us are in that category. We have some shining moments, and then we have moments where we're like, oh, I was pretty bratty today, and I wish I didn't have such a bad attitude, but I can't pull myself out of it. So when we're giving thought to the things that we have to do, whether we want to do them or not, then giving that thought means we're potentially going to try to make different choices. And that's where being intentional comes in. So if I'm just kind of running through my day and I'm doing the things that I need to do, but I'm not trying to think through how I'm doing them. Is it going well? Is it not going well? Could I have done that better? Could I have changed the how and the when and the why and all those things? And if I had changed those things, how could this have gone better for me? Could I have done it more efficiently? Could I have done it with a better attitude? Could I have done it in a different time? Did I need to prioritize that over something else? Did I need to prioritize something else over this? What would change if I was more intentional and gave more thought to the way that I go about my day? And for some people, that can just be sitting and talking about it with someone. It could be just thinking about it and kind of dedicating time to thinking. It can be writing, making a list. The reason I love episodes like this is because, well, all the episodes really, but essentially when we're focusing on a very specific topic like this, then it gives you time to, it's like this is the time that gets dedicated. You may not think that you have time to sit and plan things because you're really busy. But if you've got a headphone in and you're doing your chores or you're driving right now while you're listening to this, then you are doing something really good for yourself, which is that you are dedicating time to work on yourself and to listen to something that could give you ideas about what you could be doing differently. Now, the coolest thing about hearing someone talk about a lesson like this is that the way you hear it is going to be the way you need to hear it, right? I could say, hey, when you are interacting with your kid and you're very short with them, blah, 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 blah. But you might hear that and say, well, I don't really have a kid, or that's not really the dynamic with my child, but I am like that with my spouse, or I am like that with my parent. And then before you know it, you've taken something that I've said, you've internalized it a very specific way, and you have come up with a way that you would like to try to apply this. You've learned something about yourself and you want to try to apply this lesson and try to see if you can make some changes. That is the beauty of listening to someone talk about something like this. It just hits you the way it needs to hit you. So even if you're not married yet, even if you don't have kids yet, these things are all about self-growth and personal development and things like that. And so when you're thinking about any relationship or any decision you have to make or any responsibility that you have, when you are intentional with how you do things, it always goes better. It's not going to be perfect. Sometimes things still go horribly wrong. But generally speaking, I would say when you set out to plan, when you plan your day versus just winging your day, you're probably more productive on days that you plan your day. When you make a decision, if you feel like let's say you have to talk to someone about something difficult, maybe you have to have kind of a confrontation or a chat with someone in your family about a sensitive topic. If you put some thoughts together first and you kind of think through what you want to say, maybe you write it down, maybe you just go through it in your mind, you're probably going to say it a lot more clearly and concisely and effectively than if you just walk in there with absolutely no thoughts given and you just start rambling. You're just going to be all over the place. You probably won't make your point very strongly, and you're probably going to forget a lot of things. You may say things that you don't mean to say, right? But when you think ahead of it, you consider your audience. You consider, okay, who am I talking to? How do they listen best? Is it a child? Is it an adult? Do I need to be careful with my tone? Do I need to go in with a certain approach? Like those things matter. But I would say that generally speaking, we don't do that, right? I think that most people tend to just, um, wing it. Life is busy. We don't have time. We just go with it, and whatever happens, happens. Or what happens more often is it's in the moment. Emotions are high. Like let's say your kid's driving you crazy, or your spouse is saying something to you that triggers you or upsets you. Then you're probably just going to have to respond, and you don't have a lot of time to think about it. You're just reacting, and reaction typically is not our best, right? It's not our best self. We don't always say things the way we want to say them. We come off maybe a little bit more aggressively or strongly, and we don't filter very well. So, what can we do differently? So, being intentional means we've got to make some different plans. Like, we probably need to look at this in a little bit of a different way. So, let's talk specifically about relationships, marriage, and arguments. Okay. So, let's say that you and your spouse get into a disagreement about something, or you make a comment to your spouse who maybe isn't helping. Maybe you're doing something with the kids, your spouse is not engaged, they're doing something else, they're on the couch, they're whatever, on their phone, and you say something to kind of snap a little bit like, hey, do you want to jump in here? Um, and then what you end up getting is a reaction, right? You get a huff and a puff, you get some kind of negative, you get defensiveness, and it's just this what didn't need to go in an unfortunate way has gone now in an unfortunate way. And that's human nature. If I am doing something and you come and you um, call me out. Whether I'm doing something wrong or not, it doesn't matter. But if you come to me and come at me in a tone that communicates maybe your annoyance or your frustration, or you're just being kind of sarcastic, then the way I receive it is going to be dependent on my mood, my mindset, how I don't know, my perspective of the situation. And then what's going to happen is potentially a clash. And this clash is going to end up causing a bigger issue. Maybe something that was super small now has become a bigger thing. Maybe you're now bringing in past issues to this argument. You're throwing stuff in each other's faces. And before you know it, it's pretty ugly, right? Some people can wrap those things up quickly, and for others, it goes on and on. Now, that it's harder to handle in the moment, right? What are we going to do? I mean, it would be, if you could handle your reactions in the moment, that'd be fantastic. Most people can't. We're just triggered, we're kind of just activated, and then we go. So here's what we're going to work on. When I talk to you about being intentional, I'm not going to sit here and try to teach you how to calm down during a fight or an argument, or how to not react to your spouse's snapping at you. That is not something we're going to accomplish in this time. What I am going to teach you and heavily, heavily encourage you is, when everyone calms down, maybe the next day, maybe a couple of days later, that is when your intentional decisions need to start. And that is when your healing actually starts as well. So you probably have experienced disagreements with your spouse, or fights or arguments or whatever you want to call them, where it comes up again at some point in some form. It may not be in the exact same way, they're not the same words, but the idea, the topic, the issue itself comes back up. And the reason that that happens is because the issue to begin with is something that is legitimate and it's real life. And you got activated and got in a disagreement. You managed to step away and calm down. And then you both were very relieved when the calm happened and when you both were able to just move past it. That is normal. That is human nature. Move on. Let's let it go. And let's just get back to everyone being okay. The problem with that is, when you have something like that come up, the wounds, like immediately wounds happen, right? I don't know that anyone can get in a disagreement, a strong disagreement with their spouse, a fight or an argument, or where hurtful things are said, without some wounds opening up. It's just human nature. We're pretty resilient in a lot of ways, but then we're also kind of fragile in a lot of ways. It hurts when your spouse says something to you that is strong, or maybe critical, or maybe it's just true, but you were not ready to hear it, or you didn't realize they felt that way about you, or you didn't realize that they had this opinion of something that you do. And when they say that, even if it's an amazing conversation, well, let me retract that. Even if it's not a huge fight, right? It's not a yelling match, but if it's kind of just that back and forth, where you say something and they say something, and you say something and they say something, and you're going back and you're trying to defend yourself and you're trying to make your point and you're trying to listen. Typically, in that moment, it's more of like just handling the situation in the moment. It's not really, and most people don't get a chance to walk away feeling fully at peace about what happened. Some people can. Some people can manage to put a stop to the argument or the disagreement or whatever, have a chance to talk about it, where they say, look, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to say that. That was not right. I just reacted. I was frustrated with this. Let me hold you. Give me a hug. And then the other person gets to say their thing. And you really do get to heal, and you get to come together in a way that's very good. Most people cannot do that. Right. And that's, I'm just telling you from my experience as a therapist, as an individual therapist, as a couples therapist, as a family therapist. I do all of the things. Most people cannot walk away in the moment, or in the same setting or situation of the argument. They typically can't walk away healed. What ends up usually happening is a calm down of some sort happens, kind of a separation. We walk away, we kind of take a break, or maybe, okay, I'm sorry, and then you walk away. You may have a resolution of sorts where it's like resolved enough where you're not angry still, and you're like, hey, I'm sorry, let me give you a hug. But the sit down conversation of, where did that come from? Why did that happen? How did we get here? That doesn't typically happen. And now I want you to think of it in a little bit of a deeper level. A lot of these things, because they are real life problems, what tends to happen is that they rear their ugly heads again, right? It will come up. It might be a week later, it might be a month later, it may be a year later. But at some point, if it is something, now not everything comes back. Like some stuff, it was just a stupid disagreement and you moved on. But some stuff that is more foundational, like how we manage our household responsibilities, how we divvy up responsibilities for the kids, who's taking the kids to the appointments, how we're cleaning the house, who's making the doctor's appointments, how we're dealing with extended family, how we're dealing with money, those kinds of things, and many more. But those kinds of things tend to come back up if you don't have good systems in place. So there's a couple things to remember with that. Some of that stuff, you can have a really good resolution conversation, healing conversation, and then it won't come up again. But most of these things, you're going to have chats along the way, because the way you manage things, for example, with your children or your home or your money, those things don't stay the same throughout your life, right? Your kids get older, they have different needs. Your money changes, you have different responsibilities, different bills, different income. Your home responsibilities change, the way you maintain your home changes. So there's a difference between, hey, can like our system's not working for us. Can we have a chat about that? And let's like, I can't do this thing anymore. It's interfering with my work schedule, or I really need to be able to be with the kids on this day, but because I'm cooking on this night, I can't go to the event with the kids or whatever. So if you need to stop and have conversations, that is normal. That is actually very healthy. And I would encourage it like tremendously. That is very important. But before we can even do that, if you have a tendency to argue about these things, then the first thing you have to do is you have to wait until the thing calms down. Then you have to come together and say, hey, that was pretty uncomfortable. I hated arguing with you about that. That made me really upset. I wish I hadn't said the things, or hey, this keeps coming up. We seem to be really getting stuck on this topic. What are we going to do to change this? Because if we don't find a different system or a different strategy in handling this thing, then it's just going to keep coming up. And I am going to tell you right now that that is most of what I see with couples, is that the things that finally bring them to counseling are the things that they have been fighting about for a really long time, on and off, and they never came back together in the calm and healed and talked and came up with new strategies. And now it's been happening for so long that they don't even know where to start. It's just too difficult to go back and find the source of the problem. And so much hurt has been done. It's compacted over years that now it's just such a sensitive topic that they can't do it on their own. And that's where a professional comes in. So, what I want to encourage you to think about is, how do you, when you look at your marriage and you look at your spouse and you look at the way that you guys deal with day-to-day stuff, or maybe bigger, less common stuff, what are the things that you would say go on that list of, these kind of are open wounds? They're not resolved all the way. Like, when I have to bring this up, I feel a little bit more uncomfortable, or there's some eggshells involved, or maybe I just avoid it as much as possible because I don't want to bring it up. What are those topics? Those are the topics that I really want you to be thinking about, because those are the things that you need to be working on. Those are the things that you need to say to your spouse, hey, let's listen to this episode together, and then let's make a commitment and be intentional in our decision to start really working through some of these things. We can all day long say we don't have time, we're too busy, life is too fast paced. But if you don't make time for this, none of that other stuff can withstand this. Everything else suffers. You will find yourself in a place of complete exhaustion and overwhelm and overstimulation with your children, with your spouse, with your responsibilities, with your home, with all the things, with your work, that everything starts to suffer. So rewind to what I was telling you about the past few months, right? So I was handling everything really well. All of these responsibilities were flowing well. I was taking on new things and everything was fine. And then I started noticing I wasn't maintaining my schedule the way I wanted to, which means that certain things that happen because they're on a schedule stopped happening. And when that started taking place, then I couldn't really sustain my responsibilities and the things on my plate. And I had some choices I needed to make. I could stay up really late and give up sleep, give up family time to punch out a podcast episode or manage social media, but that was not my priority. I wanted to do it. I felt bad for not doing it, but my priority will always be my family. And work, my practice, my primary business has to be my priority over those other fun things. Now, then what do I do when I have work, which is incredibly important? It's a business I run, and there are people that depend on me for their income because of how I run my business. And there are clients that depend on me for their mental health, me and my therapist, their mental health and their stability. How do I run that and take care of my marriage and my parenting and myself and all of that stuff? So I had to really look at that. And I'm not saying I sat down for hours over notebooks and wrote things down. I just found myself thinking about it, right? As I'm trying to fall asleep, maybe I'm driving, maybe I'm in the shower, whatever. I'm trying to think about how these things are going. And honestly, it's so funny. Some of my most productive thoughts have come in the form of um, videos. So, if you have never heard of the app called Marco Polo, I would like to change your life today. I was introduced to this by my cousin Laura a few months ago, or maybe a year ago. I don't even remember. She lives in a different state, and we weren't really able to keep in touch because we weren't making an effort. And she was like, download this app. It's a video app, video chatting app. And I was like, okay. So I downloaded it, and it is so amazing. So I used it with her on and off, right? And then I will tell you more about it in a second. But then a few months ago, I think February, I had a friend, Francesca, that I had met through coaching. She lives in Canada. We had hit it off. We'd never met each other in person. She actually did an episode with me, one of the first when I relaunched the podcast. I think it was like the second or third one. And so she and I had something we wanted to talk about. We were trying to kind of brainstorm something that we were both trying to work on professionally. And she was sending me voice notes through Messenger. And I was like, this is hard. I have to keep holding this button down. I don't really have time to do that. I was like, hey, will you try downloading this app? Download Marco Polo. And she downloaded it, and we started making videos. And I literally like prop up my phone while I'm like doing my makeup or driving or cooking or doing a puzzle, or I'm walking around putting laundry away, folding laundry, whatever. I just prop it up. I press the record button, and what it does is it records a message. It doesn't save it on my phone or saves it on this app, and then it sends it to her. She can watch it live. Like once I start recording, she gets a notification. It tells her I'm recording a video for her, and when I'm done, it tells her that she has a full message. So I started doing this with her, and then I started doing it with another friend, Alex, and another friend, Carrie, another friend, Jenny, another like Sean. I just started doing it with all these girlfriends of mine, and now it is so much fun. And we all understand that we're busy parents. We don't have time, busy business owners. So we get to it when we get to it. And sometimes it's a 5 minute video, sometimes it's an hour long. Like we can talk, right? But we understand that there's no obligation to get back to each other. You do it when you can, but we end up being excited to talk. And it's not sitting in front of a screen typing, trying to write all these things. It's do what you're doing, have your phone up going, and you're just going about your life talking. And then you get to listen to them and get to know them, talk about personal things, professional things, whatever. And the reason I'm telling you about this is that when we started doing with these Marco Polos, when we were talking about business, I was doing this with my friends that I had met through coaching. We found ourselves talking about our ideas, talking about ways we can do things. And before we knew it, we were brainstorming real business ideas. We started full like services and businesses based off of these things. We have pivoted, like me closing the Facebook page, me thinking about ways I want to modify the podcast, me deciding that I needed to, take care of myself differently, maybe take a step back from some of the stuff I was doing, came in so many, in part because I was talking to myself in a video to my friends, brainstorming my own ideas, talking about what I was thinking. And before I knew it, I was like, okay, I want to write that down. That was actually something I want to go do. I'm going to go research this thing. I'm going to go look up how other people manage this. And we were all doing this and found it so incredibly helpful. So the reason I'm telling you that is because I needed introspection. I needed to look at myself. I needed, getting suggestions from other people is always amazing. And I have grown tremendously recently just because of them hearing what I'm saying and giving me feedback. But so much of my own growth has come from hearing myself share my ideas out loud. Some people can do it in journaling, writing, whatever. I like to like if I'm actually going to like create something that I'm going to send out, I do need to write it down. But if it's like reflecting or thinking or processing, whatever, it helps so much to just rant, like ramble out loud and just have like a solo episode monologue, right? And even doing these episodes, like I've learned a lot about myself just by talking it out, whether I'm doing my own or talking to someone else. Like you just hear yourself say a thought that you're like, oh, it's a really good thought, or wow, I didn't realize I thought that, or I thought about this before, but I'm developing it now, right? And so for you, if you look at your marriage and you look at your relationship and you think to yourself, here are the things that aren't going the way I want them to, or these aren't strong areas for us, or we seem to always fight about this, or I'm unhappy here. That's the stuff that I really want you brainstorming. What do you need to do? And with your spouse, and I do this with my husband all the time. I'll be like, hey, even if it's something that he doesn't really know the ins and outs of with certain aspects of the business, I'd be like, hey, I know you may not totally get all of this, but like there's this one part that I'm struggling with. Let me just walk you through what I'm thinking and you tell me what you think. And a lot of the times he can give me really good feedback that is helpful. And some of the times I just needed to say it out loud and I needed him to just be a sounding board. And in the end, I'm like, never mind, you don't have to say anything. I figured it out. Right. But I needed someone to say it out loud too. So, and then when it's stuff relating to our marriage specifically, being able to say, hey, this is what I've noticed. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Or this is how I'm feeling. But then on the flip side of that has to be me closing my mouth and me listening and him getting to say what he needs to say. And the more you practice that, the more you talk when things are calm, the easier it is to listen, the easier it is to not get defensive and not get pulled into a disagreement of sorts. And so it's okay if you disagree. The goal is not about not fighting or not disagreeing. It's how do you do it? Do you argue? I don't like the word fight. So, yeah, I would like you to never fight. But it's okay if you argue. It's okay if you disagree. It's okay if you have a conflict, right? Conflict I enjoy more than fight, but like the word. But it's okay if you have a conflict. It's just about how are you doing it? Are you being respectful? Are you doing it in a way that's just going to further your own personal agenda and give you what you want and make you right? Or are you doing it in a way that supports the marriage and helps your spouse and nurtures your relationship? And if you don't know what that means, then that's something I would like you to admit and identify. Like what is the difference between you know, talking to my spouse in a way where I am nurturing the marriage versus just getting what I want. And if you don't know what that means, you can reach out to me and we can have a conversation about that. But I think that when we can practice having conversations calmly, then we get better at it. And then the more we talk when we're calm, the more we learn, the more we realize there are things we can do to maybe change patterns. And then when we're in a disagreement or a conflict, we have now rehearsed through practice, through muscle memory. We've done this enough times that it becomes less toxic, right? The argument or the fight or the conflict, whatever you want to call it, it becomes less turbulent because we have cushioned our marriage and our conversations by talking when we're calm. Now, here's the problem. Most people don't want to do that because they don't want to bring it back up, right? If the thing was kind of a really rough disagreement or argument or conflict and hurts, feelings were hurt and things were said, then when it calms down, they want to never touch that again. And they hope and pray that it never comes back up. But that's not how life works. So if I can tell you those things are just going to come back up, there's just no way around that. So all I want you to do is face that and admit it and say, okay, then what do we do about it? How do I face this discomfort? And we know that change typically comes from discomfort, growth comes from difficulty. So you have to be willing to face it. You have to be willing to have the hard conversation where you say what you feel, where you hear things you don't want to hear, um, where you are open and honest and blunt, but in a respectful way. And if you don't know how to do that, that is the part that I love teaching. And I've discovered that recently through my Marco Polos with my friends. When it comes to marriage, I love teaching all aspects of marriage, but my absolute favorite part of a relationship, whether it's married couples, an individual needing to talk to her adult mother, like an adult needing to talk to her mom, I mean, kids needing to talk to their parents, a person needing to have a confrontation with a coworker or a boss, anything that has to do with handling conflict and knowing how to speak in conflict is my jam. And I have learned over time that that's where I shine. Like, put it this way, and I'm going to toot my horn for just a little bit. That is typically when people are like, can you say that again? I need to write it down. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let me try to remember what I said, and it is I don't know. And part of it for me is because I taught myself how to do this. Up until probably grad school, I was very afraid of conflict. I run away from it. I didn't want to tell people how I felt. My feelings were always hurt and I didn't know what to do about it. I would just cry. And then that got really annoying. And I decided I don't want to do that anymore. I would really like to figure out how to advocate for myself, speak up for myself in a way that was clear, respectful, still maintained my own like dignity and grace. I wanted to be looked at with like classy. I never wanted to be trashy in the way that I came across. I never wanted to be ugly and start a fight. Like, no, that is not my personality. I want to be viewed a certain way. I want to be respected a certain way. I want people to think of me a certain way. That matters to me. And I'm not ashamed to say that. So I had to really in my head practice like, and I used to write it down. I used to write down exactly what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. Now I just don't have to do that anymore. Um, because I've just gotten like it's just something I do. I'm just not more natural at it. And so I find that when I've taught people how to communicate what they feel and what they're going through with a significant other or a person in their life, that is where I see true change. That is how I've seen people change in relationships, but even more importantly in themselves, where they become more confident. They respect themselves more. They feel more able to just take control, set boundaries. Boundary work is really, really big. And even in a marriage, like if you are having an issue with your spouse and they are not meeting a need or they're upset or they get their feelings hurt all the time, and so you find that you're walking on eggshells or whatever, then you have to decide how you're going to handle that. And part of that is setting boundaries, saying like, I'm not going to get pulled into that kind of argument anymore. I'm not going to stand here and take it. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to be able to say what I want to say, even if you're crying. I'm not going to be ugly about it, but I'm not going to let your tears or your whatever, deter me from being here and being involved and saying what I need to say. And if you don't like what I have to say, then that's just part of life. But if we can't do this right and we need support, we need a therapist, we need a whatever. And so I've found that I really love that. I've actually been throwing around the idea of finding a way to just be almost like a relationship interpreter. Is that weird? But like when you have to say something and you don't know how to say it, let me help you. Let me help you word that. Let me hear what you're trying to say and let me help you word that in a way that works for you and it matches your style and your personality. And it's not to give you the words so that you don't have to come up with them yourself. It's to help empower you to speak your feelings and your thoughts and whatever it is that you need to say. Because when you can do that effectively and you create a foundation for positive communication in your relationship, and the other person is doing that too, because I would do this for both. Oh my gosh, it breaks through so many walls. And I've seen that happen in couples that I've worked with, but I didn't realize that that's essentially what I was doing, was like interpreting, helping them communicate and interpret. So it's really fun. But I've been thinking about doing that. That's still an early thought. But anyway, so all that to say, I want you, and I'm going to wrap up here in a minute. This is a very long episode. Um, I want you to be intentional. I want you to realize if you're hearing this, then most likely in some part of your life, it may not be your marriage, but in some part of your life, there is a broken record somewhere, an issue that keeps coming back around that you avoid. You hope it doesn't come back. You're not sure what to deal with whenever it comes back. It's not nice, all the things. And that's the thing I want you to focus on. And I want you to say, okay, what's the issue? What do we keep arguing about? What is the thing that we're really tense about? What's the thing that we're super sensitive about? And then what is our plan to talk about it when we're calm, which means we're going out to a restaurant or a coffee shop. We're going out for a walk. We're sitting in the backyard. We are in a thing that's not in our kitchen. If you want to try, you can. Chances are you can't when your kids are around and you have a lot of other distractions and things you need to do and you've had a long day. You need to set aside time where you go out and your goal is just to say, hey, I'm going to say my part. I'm going to keep it under 3 minutes and then I'm going to be quiet and you do the same. Maybe we're writing these things down ahead of time and reading them to each other. Maybe we're making notes and we're just following our bullet points so that we don't forget what we want to say. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but if you don't know how to do it, then you reach out to me and we set up a time to meet. And we do this because you have to remember, part of what I do is just one-on-ones. I've had lots of people reach out and say, hey, we don't need a whole thing, but can we schedule an appointment with you and we just talk about this one thing? I love that. That's great. Some people will do hey, we're just going to book 3 sessions and we're going to do that. So if there's something that you need, you get to tailor whatever your need is. It does not have to be me. Fine, I will help you. I've had people reach out to me recently and say, hey, I'm trying to find a therapist in my area. I get them a therapist in that area. I will send them, I'll get online, I will help them look for it. And I just do that because I want to be helpful, right? So reach out to me. If there's something that you need, if it's a service I offer, I'll tell you it's a service I offer and we'll plan a time to do that and we'll take care of that. If it's not something I do, I will help you find someone who does, and I will help you do that in a way that works for you. So I want you to make a decision to be intentional in your marriage. Your disagreements, your conflict, it's time for that to stop. It's time to stop repeating the same thing. It is the definition of sanity. And it is so frustrating when it comes to people talking to people who are unhappy in a situation in their relationship, but they keep repeating the same approach over and over again. It's frustrating when I do it. I get frustrated with myself. It is a human nature thing. We don't always know how to see the outside of our situation. I've had people point out to me that I'm like, how in the world did I not notice that? How did I not see that that's what I was doing? Because when we're in it, we're invested in a way that is very different. We're emotionally involved in a way that just kind of clouds our judgment sometimes. So I'm asking you to try to be objective. Look at your marriage, look at your relationship, ask your spouse, what are the things that we tend to always argue about? And let's go ahead and make a decision that we're going to start sitting down and talking about this and making an effort. And if you don't know how to start that conversation, then you let me know, and I can give you some openers, some prompts, things to ask, things to talk about. And if you need a mediator, you find a mediator, a therapist, a coach, a friend, whoever you think would be a good person to do that. But that's my challenge to you, is be intentional, make some decisions, start the healing. And the only way to do that is to deal with things when they're calm, right? We don't show up to a competition having never practiced or rehearsed before, right? We practice and we practice and we practice. So when we get on the basketball court for a game or baseball field or whatever, we have practiced. We make our kids go to practice. We don't just show up to the games and, oh, hey, you lost miserably, but oh well. No, go out there and practice some more. We're obviously not where we need to be. And if you want to start doing better, you need to start working with your teammate. Your teammate is your spouse. You better start talking to them and working with them and figuring out how you can be doing things better and how your spouse can be doing things better. So better get on it. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you for listening to my episode today. The other thing I wanted to tell you, one of my friends on Marco Polo video made an amazing suggestion to me. So as I'm closing the Facebook group, I have a lot of those live trainings that I had done, the free trainings on Facebook. So I downloaded those, and I think I might actually throw those in here as podcast episodes every now and then. They're only 30 or so minutes, but there was a lot of stuff in there that did not get heard, right? A lot of people watch them and a lot of people don't. And a lot of people that listen to this were never on Facebook. So if you get one of those pop up, now you know why. Okay. So I hope you all have a great day. I hope everything goes really well for you in this week as everyone gets ready to wrap up school if you have children and all the things. And then I will talk to you soon. All right, bye.